And we start the meeting. It was very audible.
This is the water meeting,
Isn't that like a certain kind of therapy where you like the sounds and you crumple paper? You listen to Tyler's voice. All right, I'll stop. All right. You said 10? We're good? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask for roll call, please.
Sand City,
Here.
County of Monterey,
Here.
Seaside,
Here.
Marina Coast,
Here.
Delray Oaks,
Here.
Salinas,
Here.
Pacific Grove,
Here.
Castroville,
Here.
Monterey,
Here.
Veranda. We have a quorum.
Perfect. And with that, we'll go to the Pledge of Allegiance. I will ask Mayor Donahue to kick us off here.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. And with that, move on to item number 4, additions to agenda.
No additions.
Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 5, approval of agenda.
I have a question.
Please.
I noticed the consent agenda seems to be after action items.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That is new, isn't it?
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
That's good.
It's-
Is that a discretion of the chair?
No. I'll pass it to.
It is new for this one time, unless we decide to do it moving forward. It was primarily because one of the action items, an award of a large construction contract, we wanted to occur prior to a couple of the consent items for the engineering services during construction and the construction management on that particular project.
Oh, that's
So just a sequencing issue.
I was curious of whether or not the new chair was flexing his muscle.
He does that frequently, but not on this one.
I don't have very much, but
Through the chair, question on that.
please.
So under our JPA or somewhere, isn't it true that actually the general manager sets the agenda for the meetings?
Yes,
Okay, we're just going to throw you under the bus for.
I appreciate that.
I'll move
approval of the agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay, perfect. Take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on the approval of the agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 6, public comments. These are for items that aren't on today's agenda, so we'll open it up for the public. Anybody wish to speak on items that are not on today's agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Moving on to item number 7, committee reports. A is Budget Personnel Committee. Is there a motion to approve?
So move. Second.
All right, we'll bring it out to the public. Any public comment on that? Bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item B, Recycled Water Committee. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded, and bring it out to public for public comment. All right, seeing none, bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 8, public hearings. A is public hearing pursuant to Government Code Section 3502, TAC 3, to receive a report on Monterey One Water's vacancies and recruitment and retention efforts.
That's me.
Lerna's gonna take this by the horns here.
Presentation. Okay. All right, good afternoon, Board of Directors. I'm Lyra Sampson, the Director of Employee Services, and I'll be taking this item. So, next slide. So Governor Newsom signed AB 2561 into law in September 22nd of 2024. And this amended the Myers-Milius-Brown Act, which is also known as the MMBA, which is the California law that governs labor and management relations. And so this particular law added the California Government Code, which is section 3502.3. And they added a few key provisions, which are on the screen. The first one was the agency now has to gather specific data and track it on the number of vacancies that we have, including recruitment and our retention efforts. Hold a public hearing like we're doing right now, once per fiscal year. And additionally, if we have any vacancies for any of our single bargaining units that reaches or exceeds 20% of the total authorized full-time positions, the employee group can say, hey, agency, we would like you to do another presentation to the board stating you're at the 20% or above it, and just any recruitment efforts that we're going to change, anything that we recommend to the board. Next slide. And so this is a list of the 4 bargaining groups that we have. Next one. And there is a typo on this particular slide. Instead of the 12% vacancy rate, we actually only have 9. We do have 110 full-time positions, nine vacancies as of April. That's going to change once we get to another slide here. But currently, we only have 9% vacancy rate with the agency. And so this is just a list of the 4 bargaining groups. 2 of them you'll note, I cannot see that there we go. 2 of them you will note do not have any vacancies currently, and the other 2 do not exceed the 20%, which is the mandate to have an additional public hearing. Next slide. And so this is a list of all of the positions that we have currently either open or will be recruiting for in the future. And so I can say with very much happiness right now, our maintenance mechanic, control systems programmer, and our 2 accountants have passed their background checks and are currently in the physical phase. So we're so close to getting those positions filled. Our control systems programmer has been vacant for on and off for about 5 years. So we're so excited to finally get that position filled, and we have a SCADA supervisor for it. So yeah, I'm sure Frank is very happy after all this time we finally have that position filled. Our assistant engineer will be starting on June 16th. And the network analyst, that one we actually opened in February. We did have a round of interviews, and unfortunately we didn't get any applicants for that position. So it's currently open until filled, but we're hopeful. We did get 73 applications, but SCADA being kind of that very niche type of tech position, it has been a bit of a challenge to fill that one as well, but we're hopeful. We're going to work with Frank and his team to hopefully make some changes where we're going to post, update the announcement a little bit, and hopefully by the end of the fiscal year, we'll at least have someone in that chair for them. Next slide. And so you'll note the first one on the list, our lab supervisor, has been filled by an internal position, and she's actually here today, and that would be Olivia. She started technically effective Sunday, and we're really happy to have her in that position now, so congratulations. That does mean we will be backfilling her position. Sometime this week, we'll be posting for another lab analyst so that, we can hurriedly get her some support. Which one? Customer service and environmental compliance, those 2 positions we are going to look to the departments to possibly do some reclassification to better fit kind of the needs. Specifically with the environmental compliance position, they don't need another inspector. They really need help with some of the compliance aspects that they take care of in the department. So we're working on a job description, and hopefully we'll get that one posted in the next couple of weeks. And that's my presentation. Do I need to do the recommended action, Chad? Okay. So does anyone have any questions about what we presented or the staff report or recruitment efforts that we've been doing?
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions, please?
Yeah, thanks, Lyra. It looks like we're in pretty good shape. How are we doing in comparison to, let's say, other agencies in the state?
I don't know specifically within the state, but I do know within some of our comparator agencies, just looking at their websites, they have a lot of open, a lot of open positions.
Mhm.
And in speaking to some of their HR folks, it seems their tech positions, like the electricians, SCADA, engineers, those are the harder positions to fill, as well as mechanics, which, we're all kind of in the same boat. So we're hopeful that, just doing that salary survey definitely helped. Doing that increase, it's over a 3-year period, but that has definitely helped attract more people to our positions.
So, Scott, if you could, can you ask Lyra where we were like 2.5 years ago?
Yeah,
I think that's very telling to
Yeah.
what the board did last year as part of the agreements and where we're at today.
So yeah, 2.5 years ago, we could not get mechanic positions filled, operations positions filled. We were roughly agency-wide 27%. So had this gone into effect back in 22, 23, we would probably be giving you a presentation every couple of months.
Yeah, I know we had talked about the salaries. Was that the big difference maker with having the success that we are now?
I think so. With talking with recruiters, when we went out for Matt's position, Frank's position, and some of the other ones, specifically like with Lawrence's most recent position, they did say that had we posted with some of the lower salaries, we were getting people just say no. We went out, I think, 3 times for an accounting manager. And once we did that, implemented that increase, we were able to get someone. So we're thankful that the board authorized that salary
Yeah.
survey to go to effect, because it has definitely helped quite a bit.
Right. Thanks, Lyra.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Questions?
All right, let's take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item?
I don't see any raised hands from the public.
Awesome. All right, any final comments from the board on this one? Once again, Lyra, for the presentation on this. We will move on to the next item. Item number 9, action items. A is consider awarding a professional service agreement to Chandler Asset Management for investment management and advisory services.
Good evening. My name is Lawrence Chiu, Director of Finance with Monterey Water. Tonight, I'm excited to present the professional service agreement with Chandler Asset Management for investment management and advisory service. Then on to the next slide. The investment goal is to achieve safety, liquidity, and yield. The current investment portfolio is managed by the staff in the finance department, and current approach is passive, and most of the investment is in the pooled investment tool, such as local agency investment fund, the CAMP, the California Asset Management Program, and the Monterey County Investment Pool. And staff has identified opportunities to diversify the investment portfolio and transition from a passively managed investment portfolio to an actively managed investment portfolio. So staff prepared RFP and issued in February 2025, and the RFP is still March 2025, and we received 7 proposals. And the evaluation committee, including Director of Finance, Director of Community Relations, and the Deputy Director of Finance. The evaluation committee selects Chandler Asset Management as the most qualified firm based on the experience working with California Water and Wastewater Agency. They have a very strong client servicing model, and also they have a strategic approach to align with the Monterey Water investment policy. The proposed agreement will be covered 3 years for the fiscal year 26, 27, and 28, plus 2 optional 1-year renewal. With the agreement, Chandler will assist staff to build a strategic and diversified portfolio. Right now, the investment portfolio is around $120 million. This will change every month, but the average is around $120 million. And we are planning to have around 40 million put in the local agency investment fund for the day-to-day operation and cash flow. So the asset under management by Chandler will be around 80 million. Under the annual fee estimate, 80 million, Chandler will charge an annual fee of around $63,000. And the table below shows the fee charged by the three fund owners. This includes the media public funds, they charge around $53,000. BFM Asset Management, they charge around $48,000. And with the contract with Chandler, they'll give the agency a 10% discount in the first year. This will bring down the first year estimate fee from $63,000 down to $56,700. Next slide, please. With that, I'll turn over to Chandler. Carlos from Chandler, he's going to do a high-level presentation on the investment portfolio that he will present.
Thank you very much. Good evening, directors and staff. We're very grateful to come and present to you. I'm here. My name is Carlos Oblitas. I'm a senior portfolio strategist with the investment team at Chandler Asset Management. With me, I have my colleague Victor Shin, who's part of our business development team. He's a relationship manager with Chandler Asset. As was stated in the presentation, or in the presentation you just saw, we are an active money manager. We primarily focus in local governments. We've been in California, based in California since our very beginning. We've been managing money for local governments since 1988. We've got a lot of experience in this field. I'd like to take you through some slides and perhaps give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. As I stated, we currently manage, we're based in California. Of all the firms that we're probably looked at, I think we're the only one that's actually based in California. Everybody else is out of state. We currently manage, as of December, $41.5 billion. The last check that I looked as of this morning, we were close to $46 billion. About 90% of that are local governments from a dollar perspective, but from a headcount perspective, it's closer to 98%. We work with cities locally here, such as the city of Monterey and city of Salinas as well, and several other cities in the Bay Area, all over California. And we are a national firm with a strong presence also in Colorado and in Florida. Our approach is to provide active management in a disciplined manner with an actual strategy that is followed over a long-term period. We do that because we've developed the resources to be able to do that. All of it is focused on local government investments. We're all experts in California government code and what's required of you under code. Some of us have actually worked on your side of the table. I myself took a season out of my 30-year career that I've been doing this, and I was a finance director at a wastewater district for a season, so it was a great run. We're based here in San Diego. We've got local offices in Oakland and in Marin County as well, so we're local. And like I said, it's all customized specific to your needs. If we go to the next slide, this is a sampling of some of the clients that we have. You may have to squint your eyes to look at some of those. You'll recognize some of those names. We manage money for cities, for county treasuries, for state agencies, for special districts, for joint powers authorities. If it's a local government, we've managed it at one point or another. If we turn to the next page, we do have an experience specific to water and wastewater. We currently manage just under $4 billion. You may recognize several of those names, and the sizes of accounts will range from over $500 million down to as little as $3 million. So quite a bit of experience at every level, at different types of local governments, and of course at districts and utilities specifically. If we go to the next page, this is a holistic approach. So it's not just about managing the money, about getting the money invested and generating a return. There has to be a basis for every decision that we make. There have to be parameters around those decisions that we make. Those are based around your investment policy and California government code. So we spend a lot of time making sure that the policy is updated, optimized, that it includes the latest changes to California code, that we're encompassing the latest best practices so that your money is safeguarded, and so that the objectives, the code mandated objectives of safety, liquidity, and return are met. Of course, we do that in conjunction and in collaboration with staff. Staff has a very big voice in this process, but we do the heavy lifting. We also will develop a custom strategy for you that will be specific to supporting your financial goals. We will work with you if we need to do an analysis on cash flow to understand how the money is used so that we can develop separate strategies for different types of funds if needed. We do the heavy lifting on the credit analysis on the securities. We want to make sure you're a bond investor under California code. That's a loan. We want to make sure you get your money back. And part of that process is doing credit analysis on every security. We don't just rely on credit ratings by themselves. We take that into account, but we do our own internal credit work. We ensure compliance with the policy. We generate a monthly statement showing you whether our actions and all the securities comply with your investment policy. That's something that we do. We hold ourselves very close to. And then, of course, there's all the reporting, all the holdings, the earnings, the accruals, the transactions, making sure that the program is transparent, that the public can see exactly what's going on, that the board can make policy level decisions, and that staff can quickly monitor and understand exactly what's going on and report it back to you. So it's a very, very holistic program. Obviously, also the regular meetings with staff, making sure that they're up to date on what's happening in the economy, what's driving the return and the risk in the portfolio, and what we're doing about it. If we go to the next page, maybe if we focus on the graphic at the very top, it's an arrow. And if you just go from left to right, this is just a very broad overview of how we do this. We always start with the investment policy, updating it, as I stated earlier, making sure that it complies with code and that it includes best practices as defined by various trade organizations that work in this space. You may be familiar with Government Finance Officers Association and also California Municipal Treasurers Association and California Municipal Finance Officers Association, CSMFO, Finance Officers Association. So they all have a say in best practices in all of this, and we take those into account as well as our over 36 years of experience. As I mentioned, we can do a cash flow analysis to understand how the district is using its funds and how it's allocated so that we can get an optimal account allocation. From there, we develop a strategy and we let you know exactly what that means from a return perspective and a risk perspective. And that's a strategy that's meant to be implemented over the long term. And from there on, we do the heavy lifting on the actual management. That means that we're buying the securities. You give us discretion under the strategy and the policy, and we place the investments, we monitor them, we can trade out of them actively to move the ball forward, to control risk, or I should say mitigate risk, as well as to drive return. And that's all taking into account your parameters, your preferences for safety and liquidity, how to deliver that, and understanding just the general direction of Monterey One Water. If we go to the next page, the results have been good over the years. What you're looking at are returns for composites, and let me explain what that is. A composite is a grouping. It's the universe of all accounts that we manage to one mandate. So we're not cherry picking an account and showing you one where the return looks really good, but we gather all accounts that are managed to a specific mandate. The very top one, limited maturity, are accounts that are generally between 1 and 3 years and average somewhere around 1.7, 1.8 years. The middle one, the short-term bond, is a little longer, between 1 and 5 years and average 2.5 years. It's a little longer. The intermediate bond is much longer. Usually we get those when we have engineering and construction heavy agencies that have reserved funds and long-term projects where they need to hold money for a little longer. Those average between 1 and 10 years. California code does allow you to go beyond 5 years under special circumstances and by special permission of this governing body here. But to give you an idea, those are the returns. These are total returns, and what you're looking at are anything that's 1 year or even longer than 1 year are annualized. It's giving you the annual equivalent. So, for example, the limited maturity, the gross return going back since inception, and the numbed inception numbers are listed on there. We average 4.18. That goes back 30 odd years, 35 odd years. For the last year, that averaged 433. The short-term bond approached 386 for the last year since we began managing that 3.61 per year. This is an environment where over the last 15 years, we've had yields less than 1%, and in some instances, less than 1/10%. So they've done well. We're not doing anything magical. We're not doing anything that's illegal or risky. We're following the law. We're just actively managing the portfolio so that we stick with a strategy over the long run. It's meant to serve you over a multi-rate cycle, always keeping in mind the objectives of safety and liquidity before we think about return. The last slide, and I'll wrap up with, is it's just a graphic of how those three strategies did versus local agency investment fund, which you are all aware is the state pool, which is a fantastic program. They do a really good job for local governments in California. It's very well run. We talk to them periodically. They are meant to be a short-term pool. Their money is kept very, very short because they provide liquidity, daily liquidity to local governments just like you. And for that reason, they don't buy longer maturities. But what we know is that over the long run, longer dated maturities, when you average a longer maturity and a longer duration, over the long run, you tend to do better. So that's one of the things that we do to try and generate return for you above and beyond what the state pool is giving you. The numbers give you, over the last 20 years, what a $100 million investment would have looked like through December and how you would have outperformed over LAIF. Obviously, we don't promise returns. Past performance is no indication of the future, but it just gives you an indication of what we're trying to do here. Over the long run, the idea is to better match the duration of your investments with the duration of your liabilities and what you're doing here locally to be a good match, to actively monitor it, to collaborate with staff to make sure that it's addressing the needs and to optimize this portfolio for, after having met safety and liquidity, for return. I'll stop there and take any questions that you may have.
Awesome. Thank you for the presentation. Open it up for questions. I have a few. If nobody wants to go, please
Yeah,
go.
okay, so the donut chart that you showed there, 80% of it, that's in T-bills, right?
Let's go back to that. No, if I were to put it, that donut chart that you saw is a makeup of the types of clients that we have. But you're asking me a question about what we're buying.
Yeah.
So not T-bills, but I would say that on average, of the investments that we make for local governments, currently, this is a dynamic figure because we reallocate between different sectors depending on what sector trends we see and what opportunities present themselves. Currently, our approach is to hold approximately anywhere from 40 to 45% in Treasury securities. That could include bills, notes. So it could reach out longer. T-bills are very short. We're buying even longer than that. And we're actively managing it, not just so that you can get a yield, an interest income. It is a loan and you're collecting rent on it. So not only are we trying to collect interest income on it, we're also trying to capitalize on an appreciation of the fair value where possible. That's an actively managed process. But to answer your question, about 40 right now, our call is to have anywhere from around 40 to 45 in treasuries. Federal agencies is another governmental sector that you're probably familiar with. We're buying much less of those. They're very expensive and don't pay you as much. Code allows you to go up to about to 30% in high credit quality, medium-term corporate notes. We currently have an allocation of average of around 23 to 25%. But like I said, those allocations are dynamic. We buy everything with the intent to hold the maturity, but we may not. We may actively trade it to move the ball forward to increase liquidity, to improve credit quality, and of course, to generate a higher income for the portfolio.
Okay, so looking at the whole portfolio, 40% T-bills roughly, 20%
T-notes,
corporate note, you're
T-notes,
saying?
T-notes, yes.
Okay, notes. So that's 60%. What's the rest in?
Corporate bonds. We buy federal agency securities. We have the ability to buy negotiable certificates of deposit. We can buy pass-through securities. So that would include asset-backed securities. And all of these are allowed under California Government Code Section 53601.
Okay. And then the last question, so LAIF, I looked it up, it's like 4.3, somewhere around there. And some of the rates of return that you show up there are less than LAIF. So can you explain that? I mean, it's like,
Absolutely. So that's not an apples to apples comparison. When you look at I know the yield you're looking at because I look at it daily. The yield you're looking at from LAIF is the yield if you would invest today. The yield if you would invest today in these sectors are going to be somewhere around that neighborhood or higher. If I buy a medium-term corporate note in the 3-year range, I'm going to pick up somewhere around 5% today. That's called a market yield. The yield you're quoting from Leif is a market yield. The numbers you saw up there are returns. They're a look back for a given period. We started at a certain point, we ended at a certain point. How did we move the portfolio forward? So those are not yields, but rather a return. How much did the portfolio grow by in the past? A 431 from Leif today is if you put your money in Leif today and nothing changed and you left it there for a year and they reinvested at the same rate, in a year, you'll get 431. But as you know, rates are on their way down. They've been falling. They've been falling because of the tariff discussions that we've been seeing. They've been falling because the Federal Reserve is expected to lower interest rates for the overnight lending rate between banks, the Fed funds target rate. They've been coming down because though the economy has been showing strength, it's slowing down, and to keep it from bottoming out at a later date, the Federal Reserve is moving ahead of that and likely going to lower a rate possibly as much as 2 times this year.
And then I guess one more. So the fee you're charging around 60K, what's your level of confidence that you can return that to us beyond what Leif, for example, would return?
So that return. So I'm going to make 2 statements to that. Because that's a really important question you just asked. That return represents somewhere around 7 basis points annually. I haven't done the math, but just looking at it right ballpark, it's about 7 basis points. That's 0.07% per year. In the 30 years that I've been doing this, I've never worked for a money manager that didn't pay for itself and left you a lot more than that left over.
Right, thanks.
And having said that, we don't guarantee returns. I don't want to be held out of here by the SEC in handcuffs. So,
Although we are recording, right?
We can just edit out that last part, right? So I'm glad that you asked that question because you took one of my questions away from me as far as the return in that slide that was up, it went away, slide number 8. It kind of helped, I think, describe that a little bit more to make it kind of more known in regards to what we could expect. I don't know what slide number it is. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's that one. I guess one of my questions is, how do we incorporate values aligned investment? I don't think we've talked about that much as a board, as an organization. How does that work as far as our relationship with you guys?
So as your money manager, we're a fiduciary to you. So that means that we are required by the Investment Advisors Act of 1940 to provide our best ideas so that they benefit you before they benefit anybody else. So when you talk about values investing, it means that we're going to provide our ideas based around your specific needs and also based around your code mandated requirements of meeting safety first, then liquidity, then return. Once those are created equal, we have the ability to look at values investing. Those generally fall under 2 categories. One is, and bear with me because this is kind of the Wild West. It literally changes by the day. But one way to approach it is exclusionary, and that's generally called socially responsible investing. And it simply means, there's some things we don't want to invest in. Here's a list, don't invest in it. Then it's exclusionary. We exclude it. It's very easy to do. And we can do that. If that's the direction of this board, we're ready to do that. The other way is a little more complex and a little bit more nebulous, and not nebulous from us, nebulous because it just hasn't been defined. And rather than being exclusionary, it's a little bit more proactive, where you are rating issuers for their desirability from a social criteria, key performance indicators that are defined by you. But how those issuers rate under those key performance indicators right now, literally, is the Wild West. So I caution, if you enter into that world, it can become a little bit of a rabbit hole. We can do it. We do it for some community choice aggregators and some other public agency investors. But and there are some cities that swear by it. I'm not trying to make a statement one way or another. We're agnostic. We're your investment advisor. We're going to come up with the best ideas to meet safety, liquidity, return. And after those are created equal, if that's a direction that this board would like us to take, absolutely. We have the capabilities and the tools to be able to address that.
Okay. I think it'd be something interesting, particularly maybe the more exclusionary route. It sounds like it might be easier, more comfortable with having more known quantities, but it'd be interesting having a deeper conversation around that when the time is right. When there was slide number 6, and you were talking about this, the initial steps in the process, what does the timeline look like for us to go through those 4 stages?
From the beginning of that arrow to the end of that arrow, I can usually do it in as quickly as about 4 weeks,
Wow.
but that's pushing it.
Okay.
We can do it though. We can do it. The policy, we base ourselves around a kickoff meeting where we, as soon as we can get something on the calendar with staff, and in the meantime, we'll review the policy and we'll, for lack of a better term, director, we'll go to town on it. And we're going to redline it. It'll look like your high school, maybe my high school homework, but but we're gonna give you our best thoughts on it. We're going to present those thoughts to staff and negotiate or work through them, make sure that staff understands their implications and why we're doing it. At that meeting is when we set the strategy. We're going to present some ideas on setting your strategy. Some of that is going to be informed by to a great degree, we've already done it when we were interviewing for this opportunity, is to review your budget, to review your ACFR, to understand where you're spending your money and what your objectives into the future are, to look at your strategic initiatives and make sure that everything that we're doing aligns with it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I think the last one, it might be for staff, but is the monthly statements that will be produced, is that something that maybe we can include in the agenda, so that way we're just being transparent in regards to?
Yes, we will do that. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for answering the questions. Just want to do a last check-in. Any last minute questions from the board? Okay, we'll take it out for public comment. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, we will bring it back to the board.
Move approval. Second.
Any other discussion?
I have one comment, Your Honor.
Please.
Just wanted to say that I think it's good that we're being proactive in trying to increase our returns, because we could just leave it in there and get that automatic return, but we're leaving some money on the table. And as we go forward and costs continue to rise and all these things happen in the world, it's probably best that we get what we can.
All right, any other comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you again, gentlemen.
Thank you, directors. We're looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll go on to item 9B, consider approval of change order in amount of $1,452,000 to the Mountain Cascade Incorporated construction contract for the CP330 Monterey Pump Station upgrades and CP331 Seaside Pump Station upgrades project for installations of the SEPS fire suppression line and replacement of the SEPS emergency generator fuel storage system, and approved release of an additional $2 million contingency for a total contingency amount of $2,979,223.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Williamson and members of the board. I'm Tom Credis, Associate Engineer, and I'm pleased to be before you this evening to speak about this item related to our pump station upgrades project. In May 2023, bid documents were completed for construction of the MOPS Monterey Pump Station and Seaside Pump Station upgrades project. The project construction contract was advertised for bid on June 14th, 2023, and bid opening was on August 3rd. At the August 2023 board meeting, in conjunction with an award of an engineering services during construction contract to Carollo Engineers, this board also awarded the project construction contract to Mountain Cascade Incorporated in an amount of $33,812,973 plus a $1 million contingency, which amounts to 3% of the base contract amount. Notice to proceed for construction was issued on September 20th, 2023. And while construction has been going well, this extensive electrical and mechanical overhaul of 2 of our very large pump stations, MOPS and SEPS, has required significantly more requests for information, design clarifications, submittal revisions, and design modifications than anticipated. This is due largely to unknown site and facility conditions associated primarily with incomplete as-built documentation from the facility's original construction, subsequent modifications, and design additions over the past 40 years. Considering the RFI-driven changes to this point and anticipated during the upcoming electrical overhaul phase of this project, the initial contingency amount of $1 million will not be sufficient. The current change order exposure on this project is $979,223. Final completion of this project is scheduled for February 2027. In order to keep the project moving and not cause unnecessary delays to construction, staff is requesting release of an additional $2 million in contingency. This will bring the total amount of the contingency released to $2,979,223, which is equal to 8.8% of the base contract amount. This is in line with the typical 10% contingency amount for a project of this size and complexity. In addition, staff has identified additional facility improvements that will add value and useful life to the facilities. The first is a fire suppression line for the Seaside Pump Station. This 2,700-foot fire suppression line would run from the nearby Monterey Tides Hotel on Sand Dunes Drive, which is the nearest CalAm connection point, to the pump station location on West Bay Street in Sand City. The need for this was underscored by the fire incident we saw at Seaside Pump Station on September 18th of last year. The estimated construction cost for this fire suppression system is $938,000. The second item is replacement of the 6,000-gallon SEPS emergency fuel generator storage system. The fuel tank is quite corroded and at the end of its useful life. The estimated construction cost for demolition and replacement of the SEPS generator fuel storage system is $514,000. And then if I could back up and mention on a related note, we did look into the location of fire suppression, a fire hydrant, in the vicinity of Monterey Pump Station. And we did find one just adjacent to the recreational path, the bike path. So it's pretty well located. It's approximately 500 feet from, it runs 500 feet down the joint driveway for the naval facility and the Monterey Pump Station. So with 500 feet, that's a pretty good location that in order for the fire department to quickly mobilize in the event of an emergency. Plus, that long driveway isn't heavily traveled, so it's pretty well located. However, we will ask Carollo Engineers, who is currently at work on the design for the SEPS fire suppression system, to take a look at what that might take to at least maybe explore the extension for that. Getting back to those two items, we would say that given that Mountain Cascade is fully mobilized for ongoing project work and is familiar with the locale and the stakeholders, staff proposes to complete construction of the SEPS fire suppression pipeline and the emergency generator fuel storage system as part of the ongoing project construction. This will maximize efficiency both in terms of time and cost and accelerate completion. With that, staff is requesting to increase the Mountain Cascade construction contract by an amount of $1,452,000 for these two additional owner-initiated changes. So in conclusion, the recommended action that staff is asking the board of directors to approve is the following. One, that an owner-initiated change order in the amount of $1,452,000 in the Mountain Cascade construction contract for the Monterey Pump Station upgrades and Seaside Pump Station upgrade project for installation of the SEPS fire suppression line and replacement of the SEPS emergency generator fuel storage system. And two, release of an additional $2 million in contingency to bring the total contingency amount up to $2,979,223.
Thank you, Tom, for the presentation. Questions from the board? You're on a roll tonight.
So, Paul, do we normally put a 10% contingency on everything? Is there some sort of standard procedure?
Thank you for that question, Scott.
You're welcome.
So on some of the smaller projects, yeah, we've done 10%. We absolutely have. I will admit on this particular project, we've been going back and forth because when you have a $35 million project, $1 million is a lot of money to have as a contingency amount. So we were wondering, do we push it and ask for more, or do we just try to keep $1 million in the coffers so as to not so as not to slow down the contractor? At Recycled Water Committee, there was the discussion on this particular project of it sort of makes sense to increase a little bit to keep things going, particularly with the owner-initiated change orders, us coming to the table and say, can we do this? So I wouldn't say this is the way we're going to go in all the time in the future at 8.8% or 10%. I think it's a case-by-case basis. So for instance, there's another project coming down the line to you, the next one, which is like a $29 million project. And that's not an existing facility like Tom is struggling with here. So hopefully the requested contingency will ultimately be less. So I know that's sort of a Weasley answer for you, Scott. We typically don't do it. We think it's necessary for this particular project because of the nature of it. We will continue to report back to the board whenever we spend it, because that's just, I mean, that's what I've asked of Tom and Matt, just to be transparent in utilizing those funds. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I would just think that we, for future, we would estimate that percentage on the higher side. Because we could have avoided this item altogether.
And I'll take ownership of that one, because I think certainly Tom wanted that out of the gates, because it gives him flexibility and more control over his project. I was just hesitant bringing this board, hey, can we have $3 million just because?
Sure, and I understand that piece of it too, yeah.
Any other questions, please?
Yes. Just a quick question on the fire suppression line. Will they be putting a hydrant close nearby? On the
Yes,
outside?
yes. On that one, they'll be running the line, as Tom mentioned, down from the hotel and close to the pump station and putting a hydrant. In the Monterey pump station, like Tom mentioned, it's about 500 feet away. So certainly, we can look to Ron on running 500 feet of line from a truck is probably not that big of a deal, but they'll look to what's it cost to put a hydrant even closer.
Okay. And then on the 6-gallon fuel storage, 6,000-gallon fuel storage tank, will that get recycled, or is it a total replacement?
That's a total replacement of the storage system and the associated piping. There's a transfer pump, things of that nature.
Okay. Thank you. That's it. Other than, does our insurance decrease any since we'll have a fire hydrant closer to that? No?
Probably not.
Sometimes it does.
We can always ask.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? If we were to do a line from the current connection for the Monterey pump station, I just wonder where there might be opportunities to connect with NSAM as far as cost sharing. I don't want to slow us down and get in the way, but just something to explore, given that they might use it, given they use those facilities there. So just throwing that out.
I'll look into that.
Okay. With that, we will take it out to the public for public comment. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? All right, we'll bring it back to the board. And thank you again for looking into that. I know that was a part of our discussion in the Recycle Water Committee.
Motion to approve, Your Honor.
Perfect, thank you.
Second.
All right, so moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll move on to item 9C. Consider approving award of construction contract to Royal Electric Company for the CP 310 Regional Treatment Plant Electrical Upgrade and Interconnection Project in the amount of $29,489,400. Lots of money going out today. That I'll pass it to Matt for staff presentation.
Good evening, board members. I'm Matt Thompson, your Director of Engineering. I'm pleased to recommend award of a construction contract for a project that has been many years in the making and will bring many benefits to our regional treatment plant, the Salinas Valley Reclamation Project, and the Advanced Water Purification Facility. Next slide, please. Our agency had originally conceived of the RTP electrical upgrade and interconnection project to replace the electrical power system for the original regional treatment plant. This is very important. Reliable electrical power is really the lifeblood of effective wastewater treatment. The existing electrical equipment is 35 years old now and has reached the end of its useful life. Next click, please. After completion of the renewable energy and electrical reliability study last year, it became apparent we needed to expand the project to interconnect the electrical systems of the RTP, the Salinas Valley Reclamation Project, and the Advanced Water Purification Facility. This project will accomplish that. Upon completion of this project, we will be able to use renewable energy purchased from Regen, if you could click again, please, to the Regen landfill to power all three facilities. And then again, please. Power produced by a new standby generator and a future array of linear generators may be used by all three facilities. This will reduce our dependence on power supplied by PG&E, thus greatly improve reliability and help us control operation costs. We will use renewable energy to make recycled water. This is a big reason why US EPA has authorized our agency to use our remaining available Water Infrastructure Financing and Innovation Act, also called WIFIA loan, to finance this project. Next slide, please. Here is an aerial view of the regional treatment plant showing where these various project components will be located. The flag-shaped piece in the middle is where the bulk of the electrical upgrade will be happening. And the linear green lines shown on the left is where the power lines will extend out to the Salinas Valley Reclamation Project and the Advanced Water Purification Facility. And then the shape shown in red is where the renewable energy improvements will be located. This is a project for which you've already awarded design to Black & Veatch. That project should be ready for bidding in about 10 months. And that's the project that includes the new array of linear generators. All right, next slide, please. Now, this particular project is very large. It includes a new PG&E electrical service, new 21,000 volt switchgear, new transformers, new 480 volt switchgear, new cogeneration switchgear, and a new 2 megawatt capacity standby generator. The project features pre-assembled weather-rated enclosures called integrated power assemblies. These will facilitate a seamless switchover from the old to new equipment. The enclosures will properly shelter the expensive electrical components from the corrosive effect of coastal air. We only recently began design of the interconnection component in order to facilitate construction, so we included a $2 million bid allowance in the documents that we advertise for construction bids. This allowance will be held by Monterey One Water and used to build the interconnection after design is complete and we have negotiated a change order with this contractor. We advertised this project for construction bids in January. We held a conference at the project site for prospective bidders in February that was well attended. And on March 27th, we opened sealed bids. The lowest responsive bid came from Royal Electric in the amount of $29,489,400. This is about $600,000 less than our engineer's estimate. Royal Electric is a responsible and competent electrical contractor from Sacramento. They are currently working for us as a subcontractor on the Pure Water Injection Wells Phase 4 project, and they've demonstrated good performance. At this point, next slide, please. I'd like to recommend the board award a construction contract to Royal Electric for the RTP electrical upgrade and interconnection project in the amount of $29,489,400. We will be financing this project through our existing low-interest WIFIA loan. The additional debt payments will be incorporated into the upcoming sewer rate study. This project is eligible for the federal investment tax credit, which would greatly offset the project cost. And as long as the tax credit remains available, we will pursue it. Assuming we must finance the entire project amount with the WIFIA loan, this project will result in a new annual debt payment of approximately $2.2 million per year. This will require a one-time increase to our revenues and consequently sewer rates of approximately 3.5% to 4%. If you approve this project this evening, we will move right into construction. This project features a lot of specialized electrical equipment, much of which takes a long time to manufacture. And so the duration of construction is long. It will be approximately 40 months, so nearly 3.5 years. Thank you. That's all I have. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation, Matt. Any questions? Scott.
Man, I feel like Tom. Please forgive me. So the WIFIA loan, how much of it can cover the cost? Will all of it cover it?
The WIFIA loan will cover the cost of this particular project. So
Okay.
the WIFIA loan, as you well know, we got for Pure Water Monterey expansion. And because of the nexus to Pure Water and providing the electrical service, EPA allowed us to amend our existing loan to include this portion. So it will cover this entire amount.
Okay, and we get the same interest rate that we had before. It's like 1%, right? Something.
Actually, good memory, SRF was actually 1%. So that was the first phase of Pure Water through the state. The WIFIA loan is closer to 4.07%.
Okay.
But there's some benefits to the WIFIA loan, at least from my perspective, is when we incur costs and we ask for reimbursement, it comes very quickly. If you remember on the SRF loan with the state, oftentimes we were 90 to 180 days out. So it was a cash flow issue. Another thing is we don't have to start repayment until we're beyond actually finishing the project. So there are some benefits there as well.
Okay. And it sounds like we have a great contractor. Yeah.
We were
solid.
pretty happy with the bids we received. So yes.
Okay. That's it.
Could staff describe, was there any other questions? Did I miss anybody? Could staff describe some of the major issues that we've had with the current electrical system, just for context? Because I think it's a sticker shock for probably a lot of folks in the public, and just to emphasize the importance of getting this upgrade to happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different types of electrical equipment, switch gear, big copper components that are distributing electrical power, transformers, an old 35-year-old standby generator. All of these have to be uber reliable. And typical sort of textbook life for electrical gear is about 20 years. And this RTP's electrical gear is going on 35 years old. And so we have seen instances where similarly aged electrical gear, due to corrosion in this coastal environment, it can cause a lot of problems where you have short circuiting, arc flashing, literally failure of transformers. And so we want to get ahead of a catastrophic failure of the existing electrical gear, because we cannot lose power to the regional treatment plant. So.
I remember we took a tour out at the facility and stopped by to check, and I think this was before you joined the team. And I remember before we took the tour, there was like an explosion of type of events that had occurred, and the door kind of flew off the hinges. And could you describe?
Yeah, so I'm going to add a little bit to what Matt said. So certainly what you saw was actually on the Pure Water Monterey project. So that stuff was like 3-4 years old. We had a transformer fail. It blew the 75-pound door about 50 feet away, damaged all that equipment, which we're going to have to replace. So that was new stuff. What we're looking at is the 30-year-old things that we're trying to replace. It gets to the point of just reliability. Daryl and his crew have been doing a great job please understand, it's a great job, but I'm going to use phrases that probably aren't that becoming of what they're doing. They are cable tying and duct taping this thing together. Like you have two sides where the power comes in, an A side and a B side. Well, it's meant for redundancy. Well, for years, one of the sides didn't work, so Daryl and company had to go swap that one out. That's some big work that took a lot of personnel time as well as resources. We go to some of the breakers that we have, some of those 30-year-old breakers, they don't make parts anymore. So if something were to fail, it's just a long downtime. And when we say a long downtime, we really don't want our treatment plant to be down for more than minutes, let alone weeks or months or whatever. There was that, the smoke that we found coming out of one of the transformers that before we took it apart, the fear was, this is an old one. We can't replace it in kind. So we're going to be out for months. Turned out it was just some insulation that burned, not the actual breaker. This sort of stuff is throughout the plant. I think some of you, I don't know if Supervisor Church, I had mentioned this too, the electrical equipment for SVRP, which is now 27 years old, we have it in the Water Resources Agency budget to replace, and it's $10 million, which is a big hit to their budget. But you go out there and the transformer's leaking. So there was a containment for this leaking transformer, which is a redundant transformer. So we only have one. So it's more from a reliability perspective, but also if something were to occur, we would be out of luck.
This just gets me thinking it might be good to schedule a board meeting or a meeting out at the plant to give another opportunity. I know there's new board members and maybe sometime in alignment with the wrap up of Pure Water expansion. I don't know what that might look like, but I think it might be good for us to get out there, just check out the space and give context towards all these things that we're doing out there.
I think that's a great idea, particularly when we're talking $30 million projects that are critical, but it's nothing fancy and new. It's just getting the power to our respective equipment.
Absolutely. Last question, the 3.5 to 4% potential rate increase that we'd be looking at due to this debt financing alone, what does that look like as far as a dollar figure?
That is equivalent to an additional debt obligation of $2.2 million per year. So assuming your existing wastewater fund budget is around $59 million per year, if you add 2.2 million per year to that budget, that's how you get to the additional 3.5 to 4%.
In the
And
context
it's
of
about $1.75 to $2 per month
okay.
for an average residential ratepayer.
But that, and I guess I would add a question here and say that's separate than the rate increases that we were already looking at, I'm assuming. So that's added on to, in addition to.
Correct.
Okay.
And I really like the way Matt phrased it, because approving this project, we're going to incur debt and it will result in debt service payments. And so there is that direct correlation.
But it doesn't come until after the project is done because of the
Right.
loan that we have. And also in the meantime, we'll be having the rate study completed and we'll have an idea of what monies we will need for the future for all of Matt's projects.
And then real quick, you might have answered this question. When is the project expected to be completed?
Yes. Well, when for you?
If we start now, 40 months from now is late 2028.
Okay. Okay. More questions, but I'll defer for now. We'll take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? All right, I see one hand. We'll go to Susan. Make sure you unmute yourself there.
Ms. Scavone, you are muted.
Wrong clicker.
There you go. We hear
Thank
you.
you. I'm sorry. Hi, good evening. Yeah, I do have a little bit of concern about the cost on this. Adding more to a bill, we don't even know what it's going to be yet because you haven't decided how much you're going to raise it already. But I do think it's a great project because, first of all, the safety issue, if you're getting to the end of your lifespan for equipment, you're faced with the dilemma and you've got a whole new system coming on and moving to the future. And I think doing this is part of that. So of course, I applaud you doing it. And I do think it's a great thing to take, once again, this agency being very, very innovative and committed to acting to become part of a more of a renewable and more sustainable future. So I appreciate that very much about it. So my only concern then would be the cost, because it's going to make our bills go up more. So I think it'd be real important to explain to the public why and its necessity real clearly so that they understand, especially since they're going to get another rate increase. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Susan. All right, I'm not seeing any other hands up, so I'll close it and bring it back to the board for further discussion.
So just one final question. Could you amplify for the benefit of the public a little bit more? What are the ramifications, dangers associated with arc flash? What are the voltages involved here? And please don't use abbreviations that the public might not understand. And are there any environmental implications of old leaking transformer oil, for example?
Yeah, this is high voltage equipment. It's really efficient to bring high voltage into the plant, more efficient to bring higher voltage into the plant, but there's inherent risks. I mean, we're talking about 21,000 volts of power. So old electrical equipment, it had, you know, he had enclosures around these conductors that protect personnel, but this new modern equipment has more safety features built into it, which should improve safety for these personnel. It also be sheltered from, it's in an environmentally controlled environment, so it's sheltered from the corrosive effects of coastal air, which is really a lot of the failures associated with our electrical equipment have been, the core cause has been corrosion. So by sheltering it from corrosion, you know, hopefully minimizes the possibility of things like arc flash explosions and those types of hazards to personnel.
And can you explain for the public what an arc flash is?
Yeah, and arc flash is essentially, you've all seen flashes at a smaller scale at home, but imagine the power of lightning in a very short distance. It can be very dangerous. It can be lethal, and so this equipment is specifically designed to shield operations personnel from the very high voltage flowing through these conductors and into our facility. And then environmentally, modern transformers do not typically have toxic oils used for cooling. So more modern transformers should reduce slightly liabilities as compared to the existing old transformers.
Yeah, so it's not the PCBs that we used to hear of, but it's still oil that we'd rather not be leaking on the ground.
Well, and do we know if what we're currently leaking is PCB laden or not, or?
I
The ones from
believe
27 years ago?
I don't believe the existing transformers that the existing transformer that is leaking at SVRP is PCBs. It's a newer cooling fluid.
Well, that's good. That's good. Thank you.
All right, well, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
Any other discussion?
One comment.
Please.
Thank you. Just want to say, I think it's important that we're moving forward. We're going to have increased connectivity, and I think that that's huge. I mean, we're going to have all the plants talking to each other, and that's great. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. Anybody else? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll move on to item number 9D, receive preliminary summary of the proposed fiscal year 2025-26 draft budget. With that, I'll pass it to Lawrence.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. My name is Lawrence Shu, Director of Finance. Tonight, I'm going to present the FY 25-26 preliminary proposed budget. Tonight, we are going to do a very high-level overview. When we have the budget workshop in May, I'll provide more detailed line-item budget to the board. for consideration. Slide number 2. So the agenda today include overview of the wastewater fund. This is our general fund that fund the day-to-day operation of the Monterey Water. Renewable Energy Fund. Under the Monterey County Water Resource Agency, there are 3 funds, the SVRP, CSIP, and the SRDF. And we're also looking at the Pure Water Monterey Fund and the staffing for the next fiscal year. Next slide, please. It is important to note that Monterey Water has 6 funds accounting for its operation. The first one is the wastewater fund. We refer to the Fund 1 or the general fund. The next one is Fund 3, the renewable energy. Under the Water Resource Agency, we have 3 funds. Fund 4 is the SVRP, Fund 5 is CSIP, and the Fund 6 is SRDF. The reason we have 3 different funds for different programs is to avoid funds get transferred between each program. And Fund 58 is the Pure Water Monterey Fund. Next slide, please. Now we look at some of the highlights for the goals in the proposed budget for the FY26. On the capital side, we continue to invest agency revenue into building the infrastructure of different projects. FY26 will be the 5th of the last year of the adopt rate increase, and staff is working on the RFP on the rate increase that will present to the board in the fall this year. We also provide timely maintenance to ensure that all the infrastructure have a very reliable track record of safety. In addition, this budget also funds $200,000 for the customer assistance program for the low-income customer. And it is very important to note that the $200,000 is coming from the long fee revenue. In addition, the IT department working on the enterprise resource planning system implementation, pretty much like a look at the new way how we implement a new payroll, general ledger, HR system to bring the agency up to speed and to improve the overall efficiency of the finance and HR department. We also continue to explore options to expand the use of the renewable energy. And HR and safety, they are working very hard to maintain a very low accident rate. In addition, we have a very robust leadership and communication training for all the staff in this agency. Okay, now we're focusing on the wastewater fund. Again, this is a very high-level summary. I'll provide a very detailed analysis when we do the budget workshop. The project revenue for the FY26 is $83.6 million. On the right-hand side is a donut chart that shows $83 million. Almost 71% of $59 million is coming from the residential fee, 20% or $60 million from the commercial side, and miscellaneous revenue like the investment interest return account for around like $8 million or 10% of the total agency revenue. In addition, the next year, we also project $10 million of WIFIA financing for the wastewater fund. This brings the total project revenue for the next fiscal year to $93 million. On the operating side, the total operating budget is $51 million. The donut chart on the far right-hand side at the bottom shows the $53 million. Staffing, including employee benefit, wages, is around 44% of the total budget. Operation, like supplies, maintenance, professional service contract, is around 46%. Or $24 million of the total budget. Capital outlay, like small equipment repair or purchase, is around 6%, and the debt service payment is $2.2 million. I would like to point out that fiscal year 2027 is the last payment for the 2012 pension bonds and the 2013 refunding bonds. And after that, there won't be any debt for the wastewater fund based on the current schedule, unless we have some exciting project that we want to finance in the future. So I mentioned about the customer assistance program. So we budget $200,000 or 0.2 million. This brings the total project expense for the wastewater fund to 53.7 million. Now we change gear a little bit, looking at the capital project. The project capital project that will carry over from the current fiscal year to the next fiscal year is projected at 7 million. Capital project for the next fiscal year I divided into 3 categories. I'll provide you with more detail in the next slide. Engineering department is around 31 million. IT around $900,000. And the Brian Out4 project is $800,000. This brings the total CIP for the next fiscal year to 33 million. Do you have any question before I move on to the next slide?
The Bryant outfall, that's not, we're receiving payment for that, right? So
Yes, so that's funded through CalAm.
any other questions? Good.
Okay, next slide, please. Within the wastewater fund, we do have set aside operating reserve, which is equal to 5% of the operating budget, and the capital reserve equal to around 10%. So for the FY26, the operating reserve, we're looking at around 2.3 million. And the capital reserve, again, this is different than the CIP. Let's look at the definition at the bottom. Operating reserve, we set aside for unexpected operating expense. And the capital reserve are set aside for unexpected equipment replacement. It has nothing to do with the CIP. So I want to be very clear about that. So we have set aside 4.5 million for the unexpected operating expense and the unexpected equipment replacement in the budget. Now we're focusing on the CIP for the next fiscal year, the 33 million that I just presented earlier. Engineering department, those are the detailed breakdown. I'm not going to read out all those CIP, but I'm going to highlight there are 2. The first one is the pump station upgrade. It's a 14.6 million project. And the RTP, the regional treatment plant electrical update, is a 10.1 million project, which is eligible for WIFIA financing. Information service, the biggest project is the enterprise resource planning system implementation, is around $700,000. And there are 2 other smaller projects, is around $200,000. And the Brian Out4 project is $800,000. This brings the wastewater fund total capital project to 33.1 million. Okay, move on to the next slide. Since most of the employee, they are budget under the wastewater fund, now we change focus a little bit, look at the pension and fund actuarial liability. And the UAL is the difference between the amount of future benefit of a pension fund that is expected to pay out and the asset we have in the pension fund right now. So we look at the CalPERS actuarial report as of June 30th, 2023. Again, there's like a 2-year time net in the CalPERS actuarial report. Tier 1, we call this the classic member. The retirement formula is 3% at 60. The unfunded actuarial liability is 35 million. This is most of the employee, they work in the agency for a long time and they have already retired. So those are the classic member, they get the 3%. So that's why you see the 35 million UAL. For the tier 2, the classic member is 2% at 55. The UAL is around $400,000. And the tier 3, we call this the prepper member. Those members who joined the CalPERS in 2013 is around 0.9 or $900,000. So the total UAL for the agency is 36 million. The next column is the annual payment on the UAL. is around 3 million. Based on the current payment schedule, we anticipate all the UAL will be paid off by 2044. Again, this UAL number will be keep on changing every day. I'll show you the reason, right? Let's go to the next slide. There are two major factors that will impact the calculation of the UAL. The first one CalPERS called the discount rate. Layman term is the investment return. Right now, based on the current investment rate of return assumption is 6.8%. So we are looking at 35 million unfunded liability. If the investment return going up 1% on the right-hand side from 6.8% to 7.8%, you see the UAL decrease significantly from 35 million to 23 million. On the flip side, if the investment return, just like we experienced lately, there's like a huge turmoil in the equity market. If the UAL, if the investment return decreased from 6.8 by 1% to 5.8%, and the UAL increased from 35 million to 48 million. Again, this is a moving target, and CalPERS will report out the investment return at the end of each fiscal year. The other factor that will impact the UAL is the mortality rate. As we know, the more members we have in the system, then the UAL will be much higher. Now, for example, if on the right-hand side, when you look at the bottom chart on the right-hand side, if the mortality rate is 10% higher, so that means like we have less members in the system, then the UAL will decrease from 35 million to around 33 million. On the opposite side, if we have a lower mortality rate, so that means we live longer, we are more healthy, we have more retiree, then you see the UAL jump up by 35 million to 37 million. So that's why when you look at the UAL, it's always like a lot of like a variable factor that may impact the UAL calculation. Okay, next slide, please.
I'll just put out for the record
Yes.
that we appreciate all of our employees and hope they live a long, prosperous life. So
Yeah, we're not buying donuts all the time.
Okay, here's a pension scenario. Assume we have 3 employees, they all make $100,000 a year. Employee A is the classic member, tier 1, 3% at 60. The employee A worked 15 years in the service, so the projected annual pension is around $45,000. Let's go all the way down to employee C. Employee C is a tier 3, is the prepper member. This is the lowest retirement formula, 2% at 62. $100,000, the employee only worked 5 years, and the annual pension is around like $10,000. Just like give you a feel of how different tier of employee with the retirement formula will change the pension. Okay, next slide, please. Now we look at the change gear a little bit, looking at Fund 3. Here's the renewable energy. There's not that much activity in renewable energy. Project transfer from the wastewater fund, Fund 1, wastewater fund to the renewable energy fund is around like $200,000 to keep the fund whole. And the project with year financing on 2 capital projects below is around 8.4 million. So the total project revenue for the renewable energy for the next year is around 8.6 million. The table below shows the 2 capital project which is eligible for with-year financing. The first one is the renewable energy improvement project, 6.2 million. And the second one is the interconnection project, 2.2 million. Those projects are eligible for the with-year loan. Okay, next slide, please. Now we look at the Monterey County Water Resource Agency budget. Okay, under the WRA budget, we have 3 funds. The first one is the SVRP. The total operating budget of the SVRP is around 5.3 million. And we request 1.3 million in capital project And this year, they approved switchgear replacement planning and design for $400,000. In the current year, they fund $100,000. In the next year, they fund $400,000. So this will complete the replacement planning and design stage. And in the following fiscal year, we're going to move to the construction. Okay, next slide, please. CSIP, the budget is around $2 million, and we request $200,000, and we have not yet received approval yet for the project. Next slide, please. SRDF, the total operating budget for SRDF is $1.6 million. And we request two projects. Total is around $125,000. When we discussed with the WRA, they agreed to do the first allotment around 25% of the funding. And it all depends on the progress of the budget. They'll provide additional funding in the future. But this will be the first allotment, 25%.
Lawrence, are the capital project request dollars embedded into the operating budget, or is it separate?
This is a separate items. And they specifically request us to separate the operating budget from the capital budget for transparency. Okay, next slide, please. Now we look at the Pure Water Monterey budget. Okay, let's take a look at the major revenue source is the water sales to the water management district. Is projected at $16.1 million. Marina Coast Water District is projected at $1.6 million. And plus other miscellaneous revenues around $600,000. This brings the total revenue for the next fiscal year to around $18 million. On the operating side, the operating expense for the Pure Water Monterey is around $12.7 million. This also includes the SRF loan around $4.2 million payment per year. There are two capital projects for the Pure Water Monterey next year. This includes the switchgear replacement of around $900,000 and a new storage building around $500,000. So the two CIP add up to around $1.4 million. Next slide, please. Now we look at the whole agency staffing summary. Here is the latest organization chart. So we have 7 departments, and the biggest department is the assistant general manager, chair the LTB operation. You can see lots of expenditures related to the LTB operation, and the other one is mostly the administrative department. Next slide, please. I divide the staffing into 2 different tables. The first one is you're looking at those administration. This includes the employee service, revenue collection, finance, IT, safety, and community relations. This table is divided into 3 columns. Let's focusing on the last column is the fiscal year 25 and 26 proposed staffing. Full-time staffing, we are proposed to have 31, same as the current fiscal year. For the part-time, we increased from 16 in the last year to 17 in the next year. The changes is mainly due to the addition of 1 part-time retired annuitant in the finance department to help on this ERP system conversion and help out on some other project. And also want to point out that the first department administration, there are 11 temps, 10 of them are the board director here. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Now we're focusing on the plant operation. There are 78, the very last column, there are 78 full-time staff, 4 part-time or temporary staff. This brings the total operation staff to 82. So for agency-wide, we have 109 full-time staff, an increase of 1 FTE in the next fiscal year. And we have 21 part-time staff. Again, this 21 part-time staff include 10 from the board of directors. So the new budget include a 1 changes in the part-time that is from the finance, the retired annuitant that we add into the budget. Next slide, please. Okay, this two pie chart shows the distribution of the full-time staff. Of the 109 full-time staff, 57% of the staff, they are working in the plant operation, around 28% working in the administration, and around 15% of the staff get allocated to other programs. Like for example, the running the WRA, the free programs, and also for the pure water Monterey. I'll show you a detail what make up the 16 full-time staff that work on those projects. And regarding staff distribution, looking at the pie chart on the right-hand side, we have 109 full-time staff, part-time staff 11, and 10 board member. Next slide, please. As I have mentioned, we do have like a full-time staff allocated to other program. Like for example, for the WRA project, we have SVRP, CSIP, and SLDF. A total of 7.5 FTE was allocated to those programs in FY26. For the pure water Monterey, we estimate around 8.5 FTE will be allocated to those programs. So when you add the 7.5 and 8.5, this add up to around 16 FTE that will be allocated to those programs. Any question on this slide? Okay, next slide. So the next step is I'm going to provide you with a lot of paper to read when we have the budget workshop. This is scheduled May the 22nd. You will have a lot of numbers, a stack of report. And right now, as the budget adoption is planned on June the 2nd, and this concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any question that you may have.
Lawrence, that sounded very intimidating. You're trying to like threaten us over here. No, thank you for the presentation. That was thorough. We got to take a primer look at that during the Budget Personnel Committee, so was able to ask a lot of good questions and have a good discussion there. But are there any questions on the board at this point? Please.
Just, if it's at all possible, and I understand sometimes I should use this, right? If it's all possible, and I understand, sometimes doing these presentations, there's last minute information coming in, but if we have a chance to get these into the agenda packet ahead of time, it makes it a little bit easier to follow and maybe address any questions we might have that would be preliminary. But it's a great report. I appreciate that. I did notice one thing. I guess AB 2561 doesn't require us to identify temporary employees. Is that correct? I did notice that little piece of tidbit of information came up, so thank you.
Anybody else? Please.
What were those last two meeting dates for the budget?
May 22nd.
May 22nd is a Thursday, and then June the 2nd is a Monday.
Oh, okay.
So May 22nd is the budget workshop, which is a
Right.
Thursday,
Okay, and then June 2nd will
is a
be.
Monday.
Would that be evening or?
Yes, both are 6 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I was wondering, two questions. Wondering on the slide with the org chart, if it might be good to put ratepayers at the top, just to kind of make sure that we're all always aligned back to who we're accountable to.
Okay, we'll make the changes.
And then the second is, thank you for that. And then the second is, and I had brought this up during the Budget Personnel Committee meeting, but our reserve funds, and I had a conversation with Paul about this, aren't set up to have funds being set aside for future capital improvement infrastructure needs. They are there for that, but we're not dollar for dollar looking at what the future of those costs look like. And I'm wondering if that's something that we might want to start thinking towards. So that way we don't have to find ourselves relying so much on debt financing, and we're being more intentional about making sure that that funding is set aside and we're setting up the future of this agency for success. So I just throw that out to the board, and not sure if, Paul, you have any thoughts on that? Not an expectation to have thoughts, but I just wanted to share that with the board. You look like
Thank
you
you,
have something to say.
Chair.
Yes.
So actually, is that concept of, do we put away more now for some of those large assets that are running throughout their useful life? It may be prudent to have that discussion when we do the comprehensive rate and fee study, just as sort of the basis for the study. So at that point, it may be prudent just to ask the board some questions in regards to that, to feed the consultants who ultimately do that study. As we get to that point, I know Lawrence has been very busy, certainly getting the investment policy or investment advisors on board, et cetera. It'll be later this year, so let's say July-ish. Like I said, it may be prudent to either have a subcommittee of the board or always bring it back to budget personnel to try to get some feedback on how much we want to set aside for reserves and what kind, if that seems appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just give everybody an example. I mean, we're dealing with this in the city of Monterey. I'm sure that other jurisdictions are having similar issues. We have staff doing a presentation, $150 million to replace our public safety facility, $50 million to replace Wharf 2, $300 million over the next 20 years for capital improvement needs, and no funding has been set aside for all that infrastructure needs. We have an annual budget of just over $200 million. So it just kind of describes, and I think we're feeling it here as well. This isn't to say that we figure it all out now. And I think that, Paul, I appreciate the idea of bringing that up with our consultants around the rate increases. It's like, how do we find that balance to help transition to a more sustainable agency in the future? So just appreciate the entertainment of that discussion. Yes, please.
Yeah, and I'd like to second our chair's comments on that. It was great when we got a 1% substantially large loan. I'd love to be able to get a 1% substantially large loan for my house, but it's not routinely available to us. We can't accurately predict where the market will be the next time we have to replace a large chunk of our infrastructure because it's gotten to be 30 years old, unless someone can tell me what the interest rates are going to be like 25 or 30 years from now. With nothing in reserves, as the city of Monterey seems to be finding itself, nothing in reserves put away over time for those investments, you're absolutely at the mercy of lenders and whatever interest rates they charge. And, you're lucky if you get 1%, but you're also stuck if you get 8 or 10%. And we've seen both of that certainly in my lifetime. So at least figuring out some amount to put away in reserves that doesn't overly burden our ratepayers is probably a good policy. What's the sweet spot? I don't know. You all have opinions. I want to hear your opinions, but I'm pretty sure the sweet spot isn't 0. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Tom. Any other questions at this time? We'll bring it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? All right, we will bring it back to the board for additional discussion or a motion.
Is this just a report? Do we need to receive it formally?
It's just a report, and we were listening to any feedback you have, which I believe we've heard.
Thank you for that. Any last minute comments? I do actually have one additional question. One of the things that we've been looking at in the city of Monterey, we established a 115 trust for our pension liabilities, and I don't know what that looks like for us to consider as an additional element as we address the pension liability issue. I don't know if you have a thought on that.
We can certainly address that. I mean, because we're looking at at this point, an unfunded liability of 35 million, like Lauren said. We can bring back some options. And I think we did that in past years of contributing more, trying to bring that term down from 20 years to 15 and how much would be saved. The formality of a 115 trust may or may not suit us based on tying up those funds. But Lawrence, we can certainly provide more analysis.
So we
of
do
that
have
too.
like looking at couple options. One of the options is the Section 115 Trust Fund, and the other options you're looking at the CalPERS HNR report. They do have the amortization schedule for a 15-year pay down or a 20-year pay down.
And a 10-year, right?
Yeah. I think that will give the agency a little bit more flexibility by paying in additional, depends on the budget situation of each year.
Yeah, and just so, I mean, my little understanding of it from our discussions of it, it allows us to set some funding aside. It doesn't make the extra payments to CalPERS. But let's say for whatever reason, we're tight on the budget one year and we don't have that ability to make the full payment because the cost has ballooned. It allows us to pull that out of the 115 trust that's specifically allocated towards making that payment. So it just allows for that additional flexibility, security, to ensure that we stay on track to pay down the liability. Okay, with any last thoughts?
I'll motion to receive the report.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
A motion to receive would be nice.
Okay, perfect. We got a
Second.
motion. Second. Any other discussion? Thank you, Mayor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll go to consent. Is there a motion to approve consent?
So moved.
And we'll take it out to the public. Anybody in the public wish to speak on any items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, staff reports except for Tammy. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Just kidding, Tammy.
So,
That was an inside joke. So
couple items here. One is, you did reference doing a tour of the treatment plant once pure water expansion is complete. You'll be hearing about it in the near future, but we're going to probably have an extension to the completion date of the treatment plant. It was supposed to be done actually now, well, actually May, June timeframe. It looks like we're probably going to shift it to substantial completion in July, final completion in August. So just so everyone knows in terms of timing for getting on the treatment plant site and seeing everything.
on that real quick, we were gonna have Dave come, or is that next meeting?
That'll be next meeting.
Okay.
Dave is gone. His daughter is getting married.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good for him. And her.
Yes.
And them. Sorry.
And then another thing that will be coming to you in the probably next board meeting is we've been working with the Water Resources Agency to amend certain sections of our amended and restated water recycling agreement, specifically sections 7 and 8. So it's sort of one of those identified recommendations from the audit that was performed last year. So we have been working through it. We're sort of down to the last few items. We have a schedule to bring it to our board, Water Resources Board, and of course the Board of Supervisors. Just want to keep you up to speed on that. Lastly, in the consent agenda, you did approve a short-term agreement between the City of Salinas, the Water Resources Agency, and ourselves. And if Sarah, could you give a brief update on that, please? I gotta say, Sarah was critical in getting this done. As you well know, for years, we've been trying to get a long-term agreement. I think the sense of urgency from the city to get something done quickly was helpful, and Sarah was the person getting it done. So, Sarah?
Yes, good evening, Chair Williamson, members of the board. My name is Sarah Snyder. I'm the Environmental and Regulatory Compliance Supervisor. So just briefly, as Paul mentioned, this is a follow-up to the April 17th RWC update we provided on the status of the interim agreement between the City of Salinas, Water Resource Agency, and Monterey One Water. So we, the three entities, met about once a week for a couple of weeks after the City of Salinas approached us requesting some help to take some additional water from their ponds to assist with pond management. I'm happy to report that the city and Water Resource Agency were successful in bringing their final interim agreements to their respective board and councils on April 21st and 22nd. So as you saw in the board packet and as you approved on consent agenda, we have brought the final agreement, and it outlines pretty clearly the agreement terms, the length of the agreement, the quantities of water, the water quality metrics, as well as the cost allocations. I'm happy to go into any specifics that you have on those subjects, but it was a great experience. I'm happy to have contributed to helping our member agency out.
And I think it goes to the Board of Supervisors tomorrow, and then therefore it will be executed, assuming it passes then.
Correct.
Thank you, Sarah, for that update.
Okay, I have a couple things I wanted to congratulate Olivia for getting the permanent position, as Paul had announced earlier. Regarding our operations, we're doing fairly well. We're getting about 2.5 MGD from the Blanco as source water. SRDF, we started pulling from the river, and we're averaging about 6.7 MGD. And as far as injection, right now, we've had a lot of days that we've shut down because of the expansion, et cetera. And so this month we've averaged about 2.8. However, that will increase May 1 because we will be, that's the start of some water rights, et cetera. Also, there was a possible leak at CSIP, and it ended up not being on our line, but on a grower's line. So we were scrambling resources out there to support that as well. That's pretty much all I have. Thank you.
You sure? Just kidding.
Oh, Lawrence?
Yes, finance is working on the RFP on the audit service. We are planning to bring this item back to the board for approval June the 2nd.
I did have one more thing. We are in agreement with the city of Salinas and also WRA as far as taking Pond 3 water. And so if all the boards agree and sign, then starting May 1, we will be we will be basically taking 1 MGD on average for the month. Now, keep in mind, we will probably be taking it during our high flow times. We also have instrumentation that if we have to shut off flows, we certainly can, depending on water quality. So it won't be just a constant feed at 1.5 MGD. The pumps don't even go that low, so it will be certain times, but to average the 1.5 MGD.
Well, could I circle back to the expansion project, the wells? Where are they on track? Are any shifting?
No, so they're still on track for completion in the September timeframe.
Okay.
So with the treatment plant being substantially complete in July, complete in August, and then the wells hopefully being able to be used in September, everything sort of is aligning. In addition to that, certainly we think the critical path item could be the permitting, which at this stage, we're slated to get in front of the regional board in August. If it slides from August, it would go to October. So it's all in that timeframe.
Okay.
And we're keeping eyes on everything.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you for that. Any other staff reports? Any questions from the board? All right. Thank you, staff. Moving on to item 12, board member comments reports. Please.
So some of you know I've spent most of my working career as a teacher, and teachers are always supposed to set good examples. So it's very gratifying to note tonight that Director Donaldson has been emulating me so well.
Still have a ways to go, Tom.
I was waiting for something to come around and back on that, actually. So that's great. That's awesome. Anybody else? Well, I just want to give kudos to our team. There's a lot of amazing work that's being done and a lot of balls in the air. So just can't go on without thanking you all for the work that you're doing. And congrats again to Olivia for her promotion. I think it's another good example of how we're working to recruit internally and lift people up. So happy to see some positive movement upward for some of our team. Alrighty, and with that, we will move on to item 13, public comments on closed session items. We have one closed session item. 14A is conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Monterey One Water versus Anderson Pacific Engineering and all Monterey County Superior Court case number 24CV002669. Anybody in the public wish to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn to closed session. Thank you, everybody.
The board is adjourned from closed session. It is 8:03. President Williamson, there's no reportable action.
Awesome. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. All right,
Yes, sir.
all right,
Let's
good.
roll.
Yeah.
We're ready.